Herter from Carlson Software. We are repeating this webinar that we had done earlier entitled Paper Space and Model Space in IntelliCAD and AutoCAD. Our presenter today is Jennifer DiBona of That CAD Girl. I'm going to turn it over to you, Jennifer, and I'll be here for questions in the background.
Okay, great. Thanks, Butch. Like Butch said, this is a repeat of a webinar we did back in June, and we got a lot of comments and questions and emails afterward asking for the recording, and unfortunately we had a technical difficulty, did not get that recorded. So rather than me just try to record it again without an audience, we decided to just put this on again. So appreciate everyone being here. For those of you, if you are attending from the after the June, if you're attending again, we did get the questions that everyone submitted, so I've tried to work that into the presentation today as well. So it should get answered on the recording. So a little bit of just kind of the big picture for Carlson. I have a slide here telling about Carlson's 3rd annual Users Conference that will be taking place in Louisville, Kentucky in November. A lot of classes, it's 2 full days plus an additional day for point clouds and CSI. And you can find out more at Carlson's website about that. We have, as far as I know, we only have one more webinar that's currently scheduled. That's next Thursday, and I'll be doing this one on tips and tricks for preparing drawings for surface model building in Carlson. And then a few upcoming training classes that I have scheduled. On September 20th and 21st, this is a hands-on training class here in Raleigh, North Carolina for My Company Standards. And this is a 2-day hands-on training, but we're also going to spend a little bit of time in an online training ahead of that to go through just one-on-one what kind of information I would like for you to bring for that class. And the intent is that when you walk out of the 2-day class, you'll have a full set of company standards that cover your layers, your colors, your line types, blocks and symbol libraries. We'll create custom line types and even get into that kind of detail. Also, the release of 2011 for Carlson's just around the corner. So I have scheduled 2011 launch parties, and we're also going to have a demonstration field demo with the Surveyor Plus, the new GPS system that Carlson has recently developed. And Butch Herter is kind of front and center on that, so he's the one answering questions through the chat dialogue today. So if you'd like to ask him questions about that, feel free to hit him up. And then with this slide, I'm just kind of asking for a little bit of feedback. I would like to start holding some regional training classes. I've gotten from probably 10 different states and different places in the country, folks asking me if I plan to do some of the surface modeling, field to finish, those kinds of classes in other areas of the country. I would love to. I have a hard time really getting in touch with people because I don't have a database in that area. I don't necessarily know where exactly would be the best places. So if you'd like to get some training classes in your area, please contact me at the email on the screen, contact us at thatcadgirl.com. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the presentation. So I'm going to do probably 90% of today's presentation in IntelliCAD. So this is the current IntelliCAD 6 that ships with Carlson 2010. And when we work with model space and paper space, when we say model space, we are talking about having active this tab here in the lower left that I'm pointing at. It says model. This is model space. This part of the drawing, this area is where you do all of the drawing on your model, I guess. It's a circular reference there. But anything and everything having to do with your project or your model goes here in model space. So for an architect, that would mean everything about their building. And for a mechanical engineer, it would be everything about a part. For us in civil and survey, it's everything about the project area. So our entire subdivision, our entire road design is going to go here in model space. Model space is virtually unlimited in size, so we can, in model space, draw things, and we need to draw things in their real-world dimensions and sizes. So you can see we have a boundary leg that is 437 feet long, and if I check the distance, you can see that in model space that line has been drawn for 437.92 feet. So whether it's a building, which I also have here, that's 50 by 50, or it's a center line of a road that has a tangent section over 1,000 feet. It's drawn at 1-to-1 in real-world units. So when I zoom out, you can see I've also placed a title block in a bar scale in north arrow here. And I can see here that I would like to be able to print this or plot this at a 1-to-50 scale. So I've inserted a title block in model space, and I can measure this. And so that's 50 feet. So real world size on that bar scale as well. So that's a kind of an overview. Everybody probably knows all that of model space. But when we switch over to the layout tab, this is what we call paper space. The reason we call it paper space is it represents a sheet of paper that we're going to plot. And you can see that I have here a title block drawn in paper space. And it is, you can use those interchangeably. We say paper space or layout space. It's the same thing. But and there are many different ways that people go around it. So I'm going to talk about what I would say is probably the most widely used method of using paper space. And that is going to be putting a title block or letting one layout tab or one paper space tab represent each sheet that's going to be plotted for that project. So if I have 10 sheets that encompass a cover sheet, an overall site layout plan, maybe a site plan, a grading plan, a couple of plans and profiles, 2 or 3 detail sheets, I would have that many layout tabs here in this drawing. So you always have one model, and then you always have at least one layout tab. You don't have to use the layout tab, but that's what we're here to show you how to do. So the layout tab or working in paper space in almost every case is exactly like working in model. So you can see I've just drawn a polyline here. You can draw, this is another entire drawing space. You can draw kind of an unlimited area. But what we generally do is we let, or one difference is we let the paper space, again, since it represents a sheet of paper, be 1-to-1, but this time the 1 is in inches. So this is a 24-inch by 36-inch title block. And if I measure it, you can see it draws, or I'm sorry, it measures 36 inches. So model space is 1-to-1 in feet. Paper space, layout view is 1-to-1 in inches. You can see I also have a bar scale inserted here. Now I've inserted the bar scale at 1-to-1 so that if I check the distance from here to here, it measures 1 inch, but I've got it labeled 50 feet because that's what's going to be representative of my drawing. Now, paper space, like I said, you can do pretty much anything in paper space that you can do in model space, but it has one very special feature, and that is in paper space we have the ability to draw a different kind of entity called a viewport. So I started, let's start that again here. I'm going to start by drawing a viewport with an MV command, which stands for make viewport. And all I do is drag 2 opposite corners of that viewport. Now notice that I can make as many as I want. They can be in any shape that I want. They don't have to be inside the title block. They can be anywhere. So with the Make Viewport command, I am opening up a window through which I can see everything in the model space. And by default, when you create a viewport like this, each one of these windows is called a viewport. When you create a viewport, it automatically does a zoom extent of everything that's in your model space. Now, I've created several viewports. Each one is live, and that's the point I always try to really stress, in that they are a true live view of the model. And I can prove that by going over to the model space, and I always do something very generic. So I'm just going to draw 2 lines as an X across my model space. And when I switch back over to paper space, you can see that it does show up. So it's a live view of everything. Now, the other thing to really understand about viewports is that a viewport is a CAD entity, just like a line is a CAD entity, just like a block, text. A viewport is an entity that if I select it and I go to Properties, it's a viewport. So like any other entity, I can make a copy of a viewport if I need to. I can move a viewport if I need to. I can select it and I can stretch it. So I can do a grip edit. Notice it didn't automatically do a zoom extent, but I can shift it and shape it. We are working in IntelliCAD 6, so we are limited at this point to a rectangular viewport. Currently in AutoCAD, you can do an irregularly shaped viewport. And in the new version of Carlson 2011, it will ship with IntelliCAD 7 that lets us do an irregular shaped viewport. And I'm going to hit that at the end of this. So there's nothing really scary about a viewport. Again, it's an entity. You can do a bunch of things with it. I need to go back into properties. This is a question we had on the last webinar that I want to address. Notice that I can make changes here. So it's got, just like other entities, I've got a layer, I've got a line type, everything else. I can change its color. And the question in the last presentation was, somebody didn't want to see the frames of that viewport. So can you freeze a viewport so that the frames don't show? The answer to that is no. If you freeze a viewport, nothing will show up. So the frame won't show up, nothing being viewed through the viewport will show up. What you can do is put it on a particular, I do recommend that you put a viewport on its own layer. You may have a viewport layer that every viewport goes on, or you may have individual layers for each viewport, depending on what you need. I do recommend that you create that. You can turn those viewport layers off. If you have the viewport layer off, then the frame won't show, but everything showing through from model space will be visible. But in the newer versions, so I can't remember, 2006 maybe, seems like is when they introduced a no plot option or a no print option for layers. So what you can also do is just on that viewport layer, make it a no print or a no plot layer. So hopefully that answered that question. All right, so we've got these lines that have been drawn now in the model space. We can see those in all of the variations, all the copies of our models, of our viewports. So what I'm going to do now is just double-click inside one of the viewports, and I've now made that current. So a couple things you'll want to pay attention to. When I made it current, you'll see that the UCS icon is no longer down here in the bottom right in plain, and all of this works in AutoCAD as well. The icon in AutoCAD would be on the left, and it would be on the left here. But notice when this viewport is made current, I have an icon here and not here. If I double-click outside of any of the viewports, you can see there's my paper space icon again, and I've made paper space current. When I have a model space viewport current, I am in the model space. So notice the difference, that now I'm zooming in and out. I can left-click inside of any other viewport, and I can change whatever I am focusing on in those different viewports. These are all, again, live views of those model space, so that if I select on one of the lines in model space, you can see that it's highlighted everywhere. And obviously we're zoomed in too close on these two, but I've selected it. If I now go and do an erase or a delete command, you can see it's disappeared everywhere. So when I select through here, I am actually working on the model space through paper space. And if I go back over, you can see it is gone. So this is just a different way to edit. You can create your viewports, frame out what you want, get it set, and then you can work on things in model space through your viewport. So I'm going to go ahead and I can erase that other line here. And I also want to just point out that notice my crosshairs when I am in model space. So I have crosshairs here. If I move outside of that viewport, notice I don't have crosshairs. I can, and I don't have them here, I don't have them here. I can left click and make another viewport current, and so my crosshairs are active. And I am only able to zoom in and out. I am only able to select items in model space now. If I go out here, I can click, I don't know if you can hear me clicking, but I can try all day to select items that were drawn in paper space, and I can't do it because model space is current. If I need to select something, or I need to zoom out or in on my title block, I have to make paper space current again. So to make paper space current, I'll double-click outside. And now I can select my title block, or I can zoom in on the title block. And I can also, only from paper space, select on the viewport. So if I double click inside that viewport, notice that I can't get to the properties of my viewport because model space is current. So I also like to mention there are really 3 different ways, there may be more, at least 3 ways that you can toggle back and forth between model space and paper space. You've seen me up till now double click inside the model space, the viewport to make model space current, double click outside to make paper space. You can also use keyboard shortcuts. MS is the shortcut for model space. And if you type that in, it actually makes the last viewport that was current, it makes it current again. And then you can also type a PS to make the paper space current. You can also, and this is the 3rd way, down here in the bottom right, you can see that it's now telling me that I am in paper space and layout 1 is current. If I double click on that, it goes back to the last model space viewport that I had selected. And I can double click back here. And that's important, especially the 2 other toggles that I've just shown you how to make those current, because it actually happens quite often. You may be zoomed in really close and double click inside so you can kind of see the hint that I'm in model space. But I may need to just make a change to something, and I've just made that change in model space. Well, now if I scroll my mouse, you can see that I can't get back to paper space. I can't double click outside that viewport because I'm already inside the viewport. So when you get in a situation like this, you have to type PS for paper space or double click on the status bar. And now when I zoom out, I'm able to see everything. Okay. So let's now talk about working with viewport scales. So I'm actually going to erase most of these. And now I'm just going to stretch out, and I'm going to give myself a big viewport here, and I'll actually make this one a little bit bigger. All right, so we've talked about, we know, and let me double click in here, and I'll do a zoom extents, and I'll click here and do a zoom extents. But we've already talked about how we know that this building is 50 by 50. We know that this from here to here on our bar scale is 50. When we plot this at a 50, or we're going to plot everything inside of our sheet, our plot scale, when we plot, will be 1-to-1, because remember, this title block represents our sheet of paper. So you plot it at 1-to-1, but we need to have all of these entities in our drawing scaled so that 50 feet equals an inch. So if the view that we have on here right now is at 50 scale, then I should be able to measure between these 2 points, and it should come up to 1. It should be 1 inch, or 1 unit representing an inch. I should be able to measure between here and here and have that be 1 or an inch. So let's check that. And I can't snap to anything. This is another difference between IntelliCAD and AutoCAD. AutoCAD will allow you to snap through the paper space into the model. So I'm just going to have to click kind of close to that corner and click kind of close to that one. And you can see that it's really not even close to an inch. It was 0.86 of an inch. And so if I zoom up here and check the same thing, now I can turn ortho on, so at least that will help me keep that as a straight line. You can see that's also 0.86. So I don't have something right on my scale here that I need to fix, because if this were truly at a 1-to-50, it would have measured an inch. So you see that it's 0.86 right now. So if I make my model space current, you can see that I can roll my mouse away one time, and it makes everything a little bit bigger. And yes, I know this won't work, but it's just kind of a good exercise to see that I've zoomed to where it's a little bit bigger. And now if I measure that, now it's 1.38 inches. And the same thing is going to probably apply here. So I'll turn my ortho back on. And that's also 1.38 inches. So what we can say is that there is some kind of a zoom scale in here that's absolutely perfect that will be a 1-to-50 scale. The way that we set that absolutely is by using the zoom command. So I'll type a Z, and then I'm going to type in 1/50, 1/50 XP, which means that we're going to make this 1/50th of paper space. So if you think that paper space is 1-to-1, we're scaling everything down by 50. And now that should be a 50 scale. So I'm just going to shortcut this a little bit and go straight here and measure that from here to here. And it is exactly 1 inch. So that's how you set the scale. Now, when I switch over to AutoCAD, I'm going to show you AutoCAD has a much easier way to set that standard scale. I think that is what I've just shown you here is still the easiest way. You can do both of these. You can type in Z and then 1/50 XP in either IntelliCAD or AutoCAD. That's kind of the old manual way to do it. That works in both. And that is still the probably the easiest way to do it in IntelliCAD today. The other thing that you can do is select on that viewport, and if I right-click and go to Properties, as long as you do the math correctly, you can also type in the scale here. So 1 divided by 50 is 0.02. So you could always type it in. So let's let's see what's going to happen. We've got that scale set, and now we need to make sure that it gets held. So we've already seen that if I double click now and I scroll in, I'm messing up that viewport scale. So that's really not a good thing. We want to try to keep from doing that. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to type it in one more time. And I'll double click outside. And to do what I'm getting ready to do, you have to be able to select the viewport. So I've got the viewport selected, back into properties. This is a handy option. It hasn't been around forever in AutoCAD, but it's been around for probably at least 10 years. So it's one of the best things. But we want to lock that viewport. And what that means is it's just lock the scale. And I'll show you how that works in a practical sense. If I double click inside, I've made model space current. Now when I roll my mouse, the best way to see it is actually to look at the command line. So between every scroll, when that viewport is locked, between every scroll of your mouse, it actually switches back to paper space and then back to model space. So you can see it's happening several times. Because we know that without that viewport being locked, the only way we would want to zoom is in paper space. So it's doing all that automatically for us. So it's really a very, very important, very neat feature to keep that viewport locked. Now, once it's locked, I can still stretch and change that viewport, but I cannot, let's see, as soon as I type a Z, so I can't even change the scale. As soon as I type Z, it tells me it's view locked and it switches back to paper space. So if I need to change the scale, if I want to go to a 100 scale, I would have to unlock the viewport, change the scale, and then lock. Definitely remember to lock that back. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about layer management, and this is really where the power of working with paper space and model space comes out. What we can do with different viewports is turn or freeze, started to say turn off, but it's close. We can freeze layers in one viewport and have them thawed in another. And that's what makes it nice. Now I've got two viewports here side by side because this is just really the easiest way to present it and demonstrate it. But this is where the value of being able to have all those different tabs, one for a cover sheet, one for a site plan, one for a grading plan, one for a utility plan, it comes out. Because in model space, we have all of those, sometimes thousands of layers that are there, visible. We work on them through model space. But then when you go to the particular tab, or the particular layout tab, the particular paper space that you're going to plot that sheet from, you freeze all the other layers that are not related. So this is how you're going to do this. If you double click, make one of your viewports current, you'll see that when you pull the layer list down, and again this is the same in AutoCAD, the third column that probably a lot of AutoCAD users have always seen but never really understood, or if you haven't used paper space, you don't know why it's important. But this third column, if you see the tooltip, it allows you to freeze or thaw that layer only in the current viewport. So I'm actually going to cheat and use Carlson's layer freeze, because this works when a viewport is current. If I freeze my lot line layer, you can see that it's frozen here, but it's still visible here. And if I look, you can see that it's that third icon that's actually frozen. Now I click over in this viewport, make it current now, and I can freeze maybe my main boundary. Obviously, it's not something I want to do. But you can see the difference. Now, the key to having all of that work is that for any entity to be visible in a paper space layout tab, it has to be visible in model space. So that's why when you get drawings from others that use paper space, you will see every single layer turned on and visible in your model space, but then they look very nice and neat and ready for plotting when you go over to paper. So that is that's how the layers work. And again, I'm just demonstrating here with two viewports side by side. But if you have more than one layout, it works exactly the same. So let's see how we can make a copy of the layout. If we right-click on Layout, you can see we don't have many options. Again, this is a difference from AutoCAD and IntelliCAD. If you type in, however, the Layout command, you get a lot more options. So I'm going to type a C here for copy, and it prompts me which layout do I want to copy. I do want to copy layout 1. It asks for the new layout name, and I'm just going to give it some kind of a name. I'll call this one grading. So it's now copied layout 1 and made my grading layout. So what I may have in grading, let's just make a couple of changes here. I'm going to go back up and turn that layer back on. So I have everything visible here, and everything's not visible here. If I need to rename a layout, I can double click, and that part's actually just very easy. I can change its name there. I can also reorder them by moving one right or one left. I can delete. I can just create a brand new one. So that is kind of the big picture view of how we work with model space and paper space in a drawing. So I want to show a few other things. I'm going to pick Save on this. Actually, I'm just going to open another drawing. So I'm going to go to File and Open. And instead of a drawing file, I'm going to open up and show you how I've created, and somebody else, I think, I can't remember who it is, someone else named this a container drawing, which that's as good as any name I could come up with. So I call these a title block container drawing. So again, I've got it set up as a template, so it's just a DWG with a DWT extension. So I'm going to open up my title blocks container template drawing. And the first thing you notice is absolutely nothing. So in model space, in my container drawing, I have absolutely nothing. You can see I only actually have 2 layers in this drawing, even though it's a template. And if I go over and click on one of the tabs, you can see that the only thing I have in this drawing are layout tabs with my different sizes and orientations of title blocks. So this is my D size sheet, so my 24 by 36. It's set up for a plan view. This is a D size with 2 different profile views kind of framed out. And here's a plan and profile. Now, for those of you that are using AutoCAD and Sheet Set Manager, I've also got these set up, and you can do this as well, set up to use Sheet Set Manager. So this can be a very, very powerful way to manage all of your title blocks and keep them in one place and manage the standards. So this is my container drawing. Let's see how we're going to use it and how we can use this when we go back into our project drawing that we've been working in. I'll show you one other way that I'm using a container drawing, and that is to set up another template file, a DWT file, that contains all the details. And this was one I helped out a group that I worked with here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area in the town of Cary. So Cary has a lot of details, obviously, as many municipalities do, and they needed an easier way to incorporate the new details as Cary would put new ones out. So what we did was created this container drawing. Again, if I switch to model, you can see it's empty. But we have different tabs based on the type of details. So we have 3 different tabs. It took us 3 sets of title blocks to have all of the street details. We have 3 different tabs, 3 different sheets for the erosion control details. and so on. You can see there's a bunch. So if I even scroll down, they keep going. So this is another way that I've used a template drawing as a container. And again, let's see how we can use that. So I wanted you to see what was in the template, and I'm not going to save changes. I don't start, yes, they're template drawings, but I don't start a drawing with those templates. Instead, and again, it's a little different in AutoCAD. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. You're going to use the typed in layout tab, or layout command here in IntelliCAD. And I want to use this template option where I type a T here for template, and that's going to allow me to select the template drawing first. And then it comes up and it shows me a list of all of the layout tabs that exist in that template drawing. So for this project, I'm going to need at least one template for one title block for my plan view, and then one for plan and profile. And I pick OK, and you can see I now have 2 new layout tabs that have been created in this drawing. And you can even see that I had the same layer in this drawing, G-NPLT, which is National CAD Standard. G is for General, and then NPLT, it's a no plot layer. So that kind of shows me the frame and where I'm going to frame out those areas. So how would this work with it works the same way with the detail sheet that I created. I'll type in layout, go to that command, create a new layout from a template, select this one, and this is actually about a 20 meg drawing, so it's actually pretty big. So it takes a minute for it to load everything in. But the exact same thing is going to happen. It's going to pop up with a list of all of the different layouts in that drawing. And so I can just make a copy of one of those layouts. I'll just pick one. I'll pick the erosion control. And I can very easily bring into my current drawing with some really crazy dimension scales whacked out on this one. But anyway, I can easily create detail sheets for current projects based on a standard set of details from whoever I have to submit that to. All right, so let's see. I think everything that I've done here, I'm just going to switch back over, and I will do a save. And I think I'm ready to open this up now. That's okay. With errors. I don't know if I'll open that one or not. So I'll actually just close this in IntelliCAD, and I'd already started up my AutoCAD, and I'm just going to go right back to that same drawing, and I guess I'm going to have to pick the one with errors. We'll see what we get. All right, doesn't look like I'm having any trouble. So it opened the same. You can see that I've got, oh, there we go. All right. So that's fun. So I just want to cover a few things here in AutoCAD that we've talked about, and so you can see how to do it from IntelliCAD and see the differences. So one of the major things that I really do miss working in IntelliCAD from AutoCAD is the ability to easily set the viewport scale. So if I'm not mistaken, I do not have this one locked. So notice that as soon as I selected it, I could tell it wasn't locked because AutoCAD gives me this neat little thing on my status. So I've got a padlock, so I can actually lock or unlock that viewport right from here. So that's very nice. The viewport scale, I can switch it to using one of these standard scales, so I can switch it out to a 1 to 100 if I want. So I can do that and then lock it. I also, at my right-click menu, I can also change whether it's locked or unlocked from here. So you get a few little kind of some handy items here. Also in AutoCAD, if I go to Properties, you can see that under Properties, here's where I would change it, the display locked yes or no, and I'll switch it to no. And again, the standard scale can be switched from here. So And that just makes it just a little bit easier to navigate around. I'm also going to show here, I'll go ahead and walk that. One of the big things that people have missed in IntelliCAD, again, it's not currently available, but it will be on the next version of IntelliCAD, is having the ability to create an irregular viewport. So a viewport that frames out, maybe you have a detail area that you want to use with a circle, or a detail area that, I mean, you can actually see here how my viewport, whether I need it or not, has to, you know, if I want to see the rest of this, you know, it's encroaching on my title block, and I may not want that. So again, this is something you would want to do on your viewport layer. So use your viewport layer to draw a polyline. So I may draw a polyline that actually frames out kind of inside here. And you can just see it can be irregular. And I may even go up and around or do something like that. So right now it's just a polyline, but if I use the command VP clip, the prompt tells me to select the viewport to clip and then to select the clipping object. And you can see it's now been clipped. I can also just do it with a circle. Oops. So if I want to frame out, let me go over, change this up a little bit. So I'm going to zoom extents, and let's change it to back to a 50 scale, and then I'll lock it back. So let's say that I would like to have a detail area for one of these intersections. Maybe I just have a ton of utilities coming together. So I'm just going to draw a circle and then use that as a clipping object just like I did the polyline. So VP clip, select the viewport to clip, I'll pick here, and then select the circle, and that's now clipped. So let's look at what's actually going on in AutoCAD when you do this. So if I select it, it still looks like a circle. And if I go to properties, you can see that the types of entities that are selected, it tells me there are two, even though I've only got the circle selected. So when I pull this down, you can kind of get a hint on what's going on. The viewport truly is still rectangular. All we've done with the circle is that we have clipped the viewport or hidden the rest of the viewport outside of that object, of that irregular polyline or the circle. So if I want to make a change, I can't do it. Let's say I want to change the scale, change its lock, or whatever. I can't do that from here. I would still have to go to properties, make sure I have that viewport selected, and then I get the lock and unlock, changing the scale, and so on. So if I'm trying to detail that area, again, I may, let's go ahead and do that, change it, and I may want to show that on my drawing at a scale of 1 to, I don't know, let's do 1 to 20. So it's really huge, and of course I need to lock that again. I can still lock it from here. And then I can still stretch that circle and make it a little bit bigger if I need. And I haven't messed up the scale. It's still locked at 20 scale. Now what happens if you want to unclip it? So I don't think this works. I want to try it. I'll just erase. Okay, so if I erase, notice that it erased 2. So you don't want to do that. I didn't think that was possible. But the way I've always done it is, again, with the VP clip command. And you just select on that irregular boundary. Oops, went too quick. So select that. Then you have an option here at your command line to delete that clip boundary. And that's how you get the entire viewport back. And then finally, one more thing that I really want to show is, actually, let me turn those. I want to see those layers back on in here. The one thing that I want to show, let's go back over, and this is just one of the handiest commands, and it does not exist in IntelliCAD. Back over to model, let's say that I need to rotate this drawing. So maybe I'm going to make a plan and profile sheet. Let's say that this road, I'm going to profile this road right here. So I need to twist my drawing. So I'm going to use Carlson's command, see if I get lucky here. Twist screen by line, polyline, or text. And I'm going to use one of these boundary lines. So that is laid out about like I like. Okay, good. So that's how I wanted to see it. I wanted north to be pointing that way. So I've now rotated it. If I go back over, notice it doesn't change. It should take effect as soon as I create a new viewport. And actually, I had noticed this before. When I create a new viewport with the model space twisted, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Let me try my twist screen from here. It should have worked, though. There we go. All right. Oh, I think I know what's going on. But anyway, so I've now twisted it in this viewport. And what I would like to do, I'll lock that viewport. I'll set it to scale first, and then I'll lock that viewport. But what I need to have is I would like to have that north arrow be shown in my title block and in paper space and not in model space. So rather than try to insert a new title block here in paper space, try to rotate it or measure it and try to rotate it, this is a very cool way to do it. And the one thing, especially if you can consider trying to make plan and profile sheets of a long stretch of winding road or winding sewer line extension, force main layout, and you have 2 miles worth of roadway that you need to set up your plan views, and your north is going to rotate for every viewport maybe. This is the way to do that. So here I am in model space. I have my north arrow rotated. The key here is to actually make sure that you make a copy of it before you do what I'm getting ready to show you. And then I'm going to go back over, where was I? Here. I'm going to go back over here, and I'll make model space current from here. And there is a command called change space. And it's available from the basic AutoCAD menu, but I always just type it in. Change space is going to take something from model space and move it to paper space, and it's going to take into account its scale factor. So when I bring this in, it's going to scale that north arrow down by 50 times so that it's not way overwhelming. So I'll select that object and hit my enter key. And you can see that it actually changed me to paper space. That now exists in paper space, and I can pull it over here to my drawing if I need to. And I'll just stretch this out. And again, the reason I made a copy is because the change space actually moves it. It doesn't make a copy and move it. So you don't want your north arrow disappearing if you have it in your model space. So, Butch, I do believe that's all I have. I'm going to have to figure out why that changed here, but do we have any questions?
No, I think we've got them all answered that came in through email, Jennifer, and I believe we've got everyone taken care of at this time.
All right, well, fantastic. We'll go back here and hit the PowerPoints one more time, and I'll also definitely get back to my information. Yeah, anybody that's got any questions, I was just going to say too, anybody that's got any questions afterward, always feel free to call up and either email me or give me a call, and I try to follow up with the questions that come in too. So appreciate everyone showing up today.